It's late spring 1989. The biggest music in the mainstream is Paula Abdul, Bon Jovi, and New Kids on the Block. But in the underground, in the Pacific Northwest, there was a movement beginning to bubble. In the spirit of the revival of the series, I want to turn now to the band who changed the face of music in the 90s and forever going forward. So let's talk about Kurt Cobain and Nirvana by going through each of their albums from their debut in 1989 to the iconic MTV Live Unplugged album that was released in 1994. So pop back with me to the late 80s and let's take a look at Nirvana's debut album, released June 15th, 1989, Bleach. First, we have to rewind back a tiny bit further to 1969, when a band called Shocking Blue released a song called Love Buzz. Kurt Cobain was only 2 years old at the time, but 20 years later, it would be his cover of this random Dutch psychedelic hit that would put his foot in the door in the music industry. Love Buzz was released as a single before Bleach in 1988 and was an underground sensation, widening the eyes of music critics across the board who were getting tired of glam rock and one-hit wonders and were increasingly interested in this new Seattle sound. It was unpolished, it was gritty and dirty, and something about it made the hair on your arm stand on end. Spring the following year, the band released their first full-length album with Sub Pop, who had originally only requested an EP. What I think is interesting about Bleach is that it's really evidence that Nirvana were in no way the inventors of grunge music, but they did perfect the sound and bring it to a mainstream audience who may otherwise never have caught on. Kurt Cobain was into all kinds of different music. Everything from the hardest core punk rock to the sweetest Beatles 60s melodies. He had an appreciation for music that went beyond his desire to look cool or be cool. And his combining of all of these diverse influences is what brought Nirvana to life and made it so accessible to so many people. Bleach was Kurt Cobain making a specific effort to create songs that sounded grungy, sludge metal, based on the blueprint that had been laid out already by bands like Green River, who would later become Pearl Jam and Mudhoney, and the Melvins, Tad, and even Soundgarden, who'd already been out for 5 years by the time Nirvana released Bleach. At the time, he was also listening to a lot of post-punk bands like the Pixies, Dinosaur Jr., Husker Du. When compared to later work, Bleach is often overlooked because it really was a collection of songs that came right before Kurt Cobain perfected the songwriting style that would make him a legend. On top of the fact that this record sold less than 50,000 copies in the time before their next album would arrive in 1991, an album that would change the course of history as we know it.